Chapter 20. Haley lay in the sun on an unusually warm day in North Lake Tahoe. She had given up on Hunter. She thought he had listened to Wilder and abandoned her to the lion shifter for peace with the large cats. Maybe Wilder was right, but there was one thing he wasn't dead on, because he didn't have the information Haley had. She was pregnant with Hunter's pups, Samsa werewolves. Now Hunter might never know, and he might never see them become yearlings and full-grown werewolves. Haley woke to find Brian gone from the lounge chair sitting next to her. She chose not to escape this time, because she thought she had seen a change in Brian. She thought she had seen and felt the human part of him. Yet she was still uncertain about him, where she wasn't willing to disclose her pregnancy. She didn't know him that well, and she didn't know what he would do. What was she to do, now that no one was coming for her? If they were, they should have been there by now. She wasn't one to give up, but the odds were against her. She was giving in to Brian to save her children. Unable to gauge her location, or if there was a town nearby, or how far in walking distance, or whether she was in the middle of a wilderness, proved too much for her, so she gave in. Not having the energy to run, and not having access to a phone, made her situation difficult. There's nothing else to do but give in to the lion shifter, she thought, as if that would be her excuse to the world and to Hunter, if she met him sometime in the future. Haley would have to talk to Brian. Maybe she could reason with him, but when would be a good time to do that? Now or tomorrow, or when she went into labor? She wasn't aware of that either. She knew nothing about the gestation period before giving birth to a werewolf. She knew her cat gave birth after 2 months, but that wouldn't help her. Haley knew about human babies, but werewolf babies, no one told her how long a development period before they were due. She didn't know how far along she was, because she had just started having symptoms. She tried to remember how long it had been since they first had sex, and the answer became clear to her. As she passed her hand over her stomach, it appeared to be growing every day. How long would it take before Brian would figure it out? Then what, she thought. She sat up in the chaise lounge. It was getting late, and Brian would return shortly. He never left her for long, because she was alone in the middle of a forest, surrounded by wildlife. When Brian was home, it appeared the wildlife was scarce, but when he was away, Haley saw bears, mountain lions, and all kinds of creatures and large birds swoop down and land on the deck of the house. One morning she was trying to get some sun, when a large blackbird with a huge wingspan circled overhead. This never happened when Brian was there. It was as if they knew he was away. When she twisted around trying to decide whether to get something to eat, she saw a shadow. She knew that impressive shadow well. It loomed large over her. She never heard him approach, but he was always standing there gazing at her when she least expected. Brian's eyes, struck by the last sunlight of the day, showed a glowing golden color. His chiseled good looks made her pause. "I didn't know you were standing there." His face showed him deep in thought. "I know." His voice low and hard with a soft edge. "Anything wrong?" Haley asked, because he stood in one spot looking down at her. "Nothing you need to concern yourself with." He raised his head, and this time his eyes searched around, as if he heard something in the forest. Then his attention moved to Haley, sitting on the lounge chair looking up at him. He wore a beautiful dark blue suit, and white shirt open at the collar, because he held his tie loosely in his hand. "I can never get used to these things," he said, looking down at the tie, and then he strolled close and sat next to Haley. "That's because it doesn't come naturally, and you don't like it." He swiveled his long legs around to face her. "You feel as if it's a chain around your neck." Brian shifted his head to the side, listening to Haley. "You want to be free, but you can't. You live in 2 worlds. She saw his eyes focus out, as if he knew what she said was true. He reached for her hand. His hands, large and heavy, lay over Haley's small hands, but his touch was soft, easy, and soothing. "You know me better than anyone. How is it that you are so young, and you are so worldly?" Her smile was closed, and she turned her head to look across and up at him. His beautiful face had a chiseled, deep-cut look, as if he had been the model of an artist, and the final details were being added as they spoke. "I straddle two worlds also. I was adopted by werewolves, but I'm a human," her voice dipped. I felt confused. I wasn't really human, because of the werewolf thing. My parents lived isolated from the outside world, and always afraid that someone would discover their secrets. The lion shifter stared away, and then moments passed. "How are you feeling? You appear to be tired, no energy. Do you need anything to eat? Do you want anything special when I travel to the market?" His voice was filled with concern. Haley wanted to say, "Take me home so I can be with Hunter on the birth of our pups." Haley wanted to say, "I can't stand another minute of this isolation." Haley wanted to say that she didn't belong in his world. But she said none of that. She glanced up at him. "You seem to be upset over something," Haley added, trying to get this powerful lion shifter to confide in her. "I didn't want to tell you, but we will have to leave here." Haley panicked, because she thought Katie would tell someone that she was still a hostage of Brian, and then Hunter would come for her, and she wouldn't be there. She hadn't given up on Hunter yet. "I don't want to leave here. I refuse to go." Her eyes narrowed and her voice raised. The lion shifter looked at her and raised an eyebrow. "You have no choice. We have to leave for your own safety. The female shifters in my pride have vowed to kill you if they find you. It's becoming unsafe for you to stay here. But you can protect me, can't you? They may send their sons after you. I can't protect you from all of them if they decide to hunt together." "I have something to tell you," Haley said, making a quick decision. Her eyes lowered. Her voice small. "Maybe you will abandon the notion of taking me with you. You will have to promise me that you will understand, and not harm me or any part of me." Silence covered both of them. Haley made a gamble, but if she gambled wrong, that would be the end of her and her pups. "I'm pregnant," she said, raising her head and looking him in the eyes. "I know," Brian said, his voice low. "I smelled you. You didn't know, but I knew." She was confused. Why would he allow her to live? Maybe he wasn't what she thought. Maybe he was what she thought, cruel and hard. And he was all those things that Wilder said, and maybe more. And would wait to kill her pups in front of her. "If you promise to go away with me and submit yourself to me, then I'll let your pups live, and I'll send word where Hunter can find his pups." Brian strutted away, as if he knew what her answer would be. Haley's skin chilled at the thought of abandoning them, and Hunter. She hadn't dreamt of a life with a lion shifter, with several wives. That thought had never crossed her mind. Not in a million years had she thought she would be part of a lion's pride, and for that matter, neither had she thought she would be a mate to a werewolf, but it had happened. Could her life get more fucked up, she questioned. Her dreams were living and loving Hunter, and having his pups and watching them grow into yearlings. She had simple dreams. No fancy dreams. She didn't need to travel. She didn't even want to live in San Francisco, or any big city. She thought she could convince Hunter to return to Samseville, and buy a ranch for their brood she knew would come. Her love for Hunter was deep, sexual, and erotic. From their lovemaking, there wasn't a doubt in her mind that there wouldn't be more babies. Many pregnancies, as often and frequent as her young body could conceive. Maybe she could have horses and dogs for her pups to play with, like Hunter's father and uncles had for their sons, but what kind of life would motherless pups have? What kind of life would she have without them or Hunter? She never wanted to find out. "Why hasn't Hunter come for me?" she moaned quietly with a sigh. Chapter 21. Tracker woke. How long have we been here, and where is Robert? He raised his arms above his head and stretched. I feel like my old self. His voice was strong and eager. That's because you are full of painkillers. And to answer your question, Robert had to go back to Insatiable to protect his family. We've been here 3 days. Vital days where I probably lost time, which I couldn't afford, all because you needed your dick sucked. Hunter threw Tracker's keys down on the foot of the bed. Tracker ducked because he thought they were aimed at him. I'm ready to ride. I'll find Haley. I have no doubt, Tracker said, bounding from the bed, pulling his t-shirt over his head, then jumping into his tight leather jeans. Whoa. I lost weight, dude. Don't call me dude, Hunter said, raising an eyebrow. You were out of it and didn't eat. Do we have any fresh meat? Not unless we hunt some, and I'm not stopping for that. When we get to San Francisco, then you can eat. I have fresh meat brought in every week. Try this. Hunter threw a mint at him. He caught it and plopped it into his mouth. A flash of humor covered his face, and he continued pulling up his boots. Tracker took his razor and comb and his toothbrush from his pouch and laid it on the dresser. Then he scooped it up and strolled to the restroom. After a few minutes, he was out of the room and heading for the door. Hunter was sitting across his bike, his motor running when Tracker approached it. Feels good to be outdoors. Tracker stretched his long arms out to the side and inhaled the fresh air. Hunter didn't say a word. He took off before Tracker put on his helmet. Tracker caught up with him on the outskirts of San Francisco, and he was a few feet behind him when they pulled up to Hunter's apartment building. They entered the garage and parked. What now? Tracker questioned. Now you eat, and then we get my bow and arrows and we go hunting. Tracker looked curiously at him. You're going into the apartment and figure out where Brian's compound is located, and then we're going out there and get some answers. They entered the elevator and took the floor to the penthouse. The highest peak and most difficult place for anyone to get to. It was what his father Wilder suggested when he said that he would live in the city. I have an idea where Brian's compound is, what with the information Haley gave me when he first abducted her, Hunter said to Tracker. The door opened into his apartment, and they stepped inside. Hunter, as usual, all business. He didn't have a minute to lose, because he had lost enough time. Tracker headed straight for the kitchen, to the fridge. He pulled out a slab of fresh venison and began eating. Normally I drop this in a skillet, but seeing I'm not with my human buddies, but my brother, I can enjoy it. Haley knew just how to heat meat without taking the taste of blood out of it. I miss her. Annoyed at Tracker's talk about Haley, Hunter said, I don't care how you like your fucking meat, Tracker. Just eat the fucking food and take a look at this map. Hunter reached across the granite countertop and pulled a map out of a drawer. He pointed to a wooded area. Look at the legend. I think it could be around here. Tracker agreed, shaking his head because his mouth was full of meat. There's a lot of land to cover. We can't ride around there all night. That's where you come in, Hunter said to Tracker, with Tracker looking up from the bar stool. I need you to use whatever you do to find where his lair is. Your father said you're good, but then you know how fathers like to brag on their sons. Hunter raised an eyebrow at Tracker. He swallowed hard and said, Don't worry. You won't be disappointed. I have been so far, especially since you did what you did at the hotel with that female, and now Robert has second thoughts about you mating with his young daughter. She's too young for me anyway. I like them older and more experienced. Speaking as a pup who never had a virgin. Hunter smirked, walking away. He didn't want to continue a conversation with Tracker. Tracker was full of talk, and it would go on all night, and the only way to shut him up was to walk away from him. Hunter walked into his living room and to a closet, and pulled out a bow and arrows, packed them in a sack, and stood gazing at Tracker, drinking a large glass of water. "What are you going to do with that?" he said, gesturing at the bow. "My father and uncle said we couldn't use a lethal weapon on a shifter of any kind, but he said nothing about arrows." Hunter let Tracker know he was ready, walked out and retrieved his keys. Tracker took one last bite, and rushed behind him to catch the elevator. He rushed into the elevator, as Hunter stood gazing at him. "When am I going to get a chance to take a bath? I smell like that blonde female." Tracker paused and laughed, remembering that night which almost cost him his life. The door opened into the garage. "That smell will confuse the lion shifters." They retrieved their bikes from the disappointed valet, and were off, zooming out of the garage and onto the highway. Riding north into the hills was difficult with its twists and turns of the highway, and the night without a moon didn't make it any better, but their eyes were trained to see in the dark, though not with a helmet. The helmet made it difficult to spot certain colors. Not knowing the highway and road slowed them down too. Their bikes had made it through wooded terrain, but they weren't built for that. They were built for racing on a highway. Hunter wondered if the bikes would make it through this time. They were the only instruments that could outrun a pack of lion shifters if they were surprised, and there were too many of them to make a stand. After reaching the spot where Tracker said the compound would be, they parked the bikes and hid them in the overgrown brush. Hunter hoisted his shoulder quiver with arrows and a bow bag across his back. When they climbed off the motorcycle, they left their clothes and shoes across it and shifted. Hunter and Tracker remembered the teachings of their fathers. They were the hunters now, and they couldn't forget that, or they would become the hunted, and chances were if they were being hunted by lion shifters, then the odds of them coming out alive would be 0. "We have to reach the main house before dawn," Hunter said. Tracker nodded in agreement. They took off, careful not to alarm any animals. Dogs they didn't worry about. They knew who their masters were and where their allegiance lay, and that was with the werewolf. They came on a pack of sleeping dogs, and one glanced up and seeing them, tucked his head under his paws, as if afraid to see what was to come next. Hunter and Tracker crept among the large group of dogs. Hardly a whimper came from them. It was about 4 a.m. when they entered the gates to the 2-story home. The large iron gate had Anderson written above it in fancy lettering. The gate and rock wall could keep out men, but not werewolves or shifters. Their first round of defense, the dogs, had been compromised. The second round, the gate, was easier to bridge. Hunter and Tracker stood back and made a leap, and they were over it in a second. There was thick underbrush, and then a large pine forest, and in the center of it stood a stately house rising up into the pines, with climbing vines covering the house and camouflaging it, but not enough for the werewolves. The mansion looked quiet with no movement. Almost abandoned and lifeless. As they approached the house slowly, with Hunter leading the way and Tracker at the rear, Tracker wondered whether the alarms were on. Tracker whispered, "Do you think they bothered to alarm this place?" he said as they stepped on the patio. "Arrogance is their enemy. I don't think they would think anyone would be able to get to this point." They stood waiting a second, when Hunter opened the door and looked up and saw the alarm, but it wasn't activated. He smiled. "Arrogance will get you killed. Remember that, Tracker." His eyes turned to Tracker and he understood. "Now step quietly." Standing a moment and looking around, the place was dark, but for a dim light coming from one of the rooms at the top of the stairs. Slowly, they approached the winding staircase and cautiously made it to the second floor. Tracker opened his mouth to speak, but Hunter put his finger over his mouth. "Quiet." Hunter gestured. Tracker understood. If the line shifter was in, he would have Haley in the large bedroom with him. As much as Hunter wanted to find her, He didn't want to discover her with him. Calmly, Hunter turned the doorknob with Tracker behind him. If they could win a battle with the lion shifter in close quarters, then they would have a chance to escape out the windows. One light of the new moon streamed through the window, and it appeared to be only one individual sleeping in the bed. It was a female with dark hair. By the outline of her body, she was too tall to be Haley. Before the female shifter could turn, Hunter and Tracker were all over her. She tried to fight them. She bit Tracker on the ear, lashed around, catching Tracker with her long nails across his chest, and tried to kick him. Her aim was to get away, to be able to shift. She thrashed around, hitting Tracker. He felt nothing. It was like a tap, because his arms were muscle-bound, thick and hard as steel. He held her down, while Hunter placed a piece of cloth around her mouth to gag her. Hunter said, "I know who you are. You are the lion shifter's mate. If you want your cubs to live and your sons, then you can't call out. I assure you that we are capable of killing everyone in this house." The panther shifter shook her head that she understood. Taking the cloth off her mouth, her terrified eyes locked with his. "Where is Brian?" She glared at Hunter as if she didn't understand the question. He repeated the question, and this time with a deep voice and menacing tone. His eyes locked on hers and he furrowed his brow. She saw the fire in his blue eyes, and she shivered. "I don't know where he is." "Maybe your sons know, or the other females in the pride." "There are no males here. Only female shifters and cubs. The others are out hunting." "Why would the lion shifter leave you unprotected?" "We have dogs and alarms. Brian hasn't been back to the den since he took that human." "Where is she?" Hunter said with a long whisper and a moan. "He has a place near Lake Tahoe, and one near the Grand Canyon." "Where is the canyon one?" "I don't know. He doesn't tell us anything anymore. He has been acting strange since he met that human, and wanted to bring her into the pride. I told him it wasn't a good idea, but he doesn't listen. I want you to find her. She will just destroy our pride and our lives. We've lost 2 of our cubs to the werewolves because of her. Yet Brian insists that he needs this female at any cost." Hunter backed off. The panther shifter wanted Haley out of their lives as much as Hunter wanted her in his life. "Don't hurt the females or the cubs. We didn't come here to destroy females and the young. We just wanted the human." Tracker loosened the shifter's hands and stepped back from the bed. She didn't cry out. She knew what would happen if she did. She stood facing them nude. Her body a dark tan color. Her hair long, shiny and black, and eyes darker than midnight. They backed out of the room with Hunter leading the way, and Tracker moving about, taking a last look at the beautiful dark female shifter. When they were down the stairs and out the door and running back to the motorcycles, they stood, and Tracker said, "That was easy." "It wouldn't have been that easy if the yearlings were there, and Brian. We caught Brian's mate, and she's angry. You know what they say, a woman scorned. I guess that goes for every species." Climbing on the bikes after dressing in their clothes, Tracker said, "Where next?" "We need to find that home in the canyon." "You can't be serious. After seeing that werepanther, all I want to do is find me a female and fuck her until the next full moon. Did you see the ass on her? I don't know how the lion shifter could leave that for a skinny little human. Remember your words when you try to chase one and neglect Robert's daughter for a human, but you probably don't have to worry about her any longer, because I don't think Robert will let you touch her. You wouldn't know what to do with a virgin anyway," Hunter said, and then took off, zooming down the highway south to Nevada with Tracker hot on his heels.